What happens when the food you've trusted your whole life suddenly turns into a luxury item? Not because it's changed, but because the system around it has? Across America, the price of some of the most familiar loaves, the ones you grew up with, packed in lunch boxes, or served at family dinners, has quietly surged to nearly double what they cost just a few years ago. Behind those price tags isn't just inflation, as the news likes to call it, but a web of supply shocks, climate hits, shipping costs, and yes, political decisions now sparking outrage at the very top. If tariffs meant to protect American goods are now backfiring, making basics more expensive, what does that mean for the rest of your grocery cart? And if bread, the oldest, simplest symbol of sustenance, is slipping out of reach, what's next? This is the Downturn Report, where the truth gets personal. Today, we pull back the curtain on 7 breads that have doubled in price at Walmart, Costco, and beyond, and why even the wealthiest voices are furious. Number 1. Kirkland Brioche Buns. Sometimes it's not the big-ticket items that make you feel the pinch, but the little indulgences you thought were safe from the storm. That warm, buttery pack of Kirkland Brioche Buns from Costco used to be exactly that. The kind of treat you could toss in the cart without a second thought, knowing it would turn a plain burger into something worth sitting down for. No flour-dusted countertops, no wrestling with dough, just that rich golden glow waiting inside the bag, whispering that you could still have a taste of comfort without paying steakhouse prices. But lately that whisper feels more like an awkward cough at the checkout. The number on the screen creeping toward twice what it used to be, forcing you to do quiet math in your head before you even reach for it. This kind of jump doesn't come out of thin air. The price of eggs, the very soul of a brioche, has swung so wildly in recent years that it makes gas prices look polite, at one point shooting up more than 70% in just 12 months when avian flu wiped out tens of millions of hens. Butter hasn't been shy about joining the party, holding tight to double-digit inflation thanks to feed shortages and the rising cost of hauling dairy cross-country. Wheat, shaken by war and unpredictable harvests, adds its own instability. Put all 3 together, and you've got a perfect recipe for turning a soft, sweet bun into a wallet-tightening decision. And it's not just what's inside the bun, it's everything around it. Diesel for the trucks that haul bakery goods has climbed. Drivers willing to take grueling cross-country runs are harder to find, and the plastic and cardboard that keep your buns fresh have been caught in their own supply chain traffic jams. Even fixing the giant mixers and ovens now takes longer and costs more, thanks to shortages of steel parts and motors. A brioche bun isn't a simple loaf baked in your kitchen. It's a long chain of moving pieces, and when one rattles, the price doesn't just rise, it climbs like it's training for a mountain hike. Then there's the part no one likes to read on the label. Dough conditioners, preservatives, and emulsifiers, datum, calcium propionate, mono, and diglycerides are standard in mass-market brioche to keep it soft and fresh, long enough to make the coast-to-coast journey. Perfectly legal here, yes, but some are restricted or banned in parts of Europe over concerns about gut inflammation, hormone disruption, and other health risks. For someone stretching every dollar, it's a bitter irony to pay more for a product that's engineered for shelf life rather than for the body. Even that silky crumb we love can be traced back to palm-based emulsifiers linked to deforestation and labor exploitation, turning what felt like comfort food into something that leaves a bad taste, and not just on the tongue. It's easy to see why some shoppers quietly trade the brioche for softer store-brand rolls, or switch to potato buns that offer the same gentle chew without the egg and butter markup. Others keep an eye out for rival brands at discount chains or roll up their sleeves to make a simple, no-knead batch at home, freezing half to stretch the effort. None of these swaps erase the sting completely, but they soften the blow when you reach the register. Costco isn't cranking up prices out of sudden greed. The same storms hitting your household budget, ingredient spikes, fuel costs, labor shortages, are pounding their bakery operations too. When eggs double in price or a trucker strike delays shipments, they have to decide whether to absorb the hit or pass it on, and at their scale, even a penny per bun adds up fast. But knowing that doesn't make it hurt less. When a retiree who once looked forward to burger night with the fancy buns has to leave them behind, it's not just a snack they're losing, it's a small piece of comfort, a bit of joy, a reminder that even simple pleasures are being priced out of reach. And if bread, the oldest symbol of nourishment, can so easily become a luxury, what does that say about the system feeding us? Number 2, Sara Lee Artisano. Bread. Some foods wrap themselves into your daily life so quietly, you hardly notice how much you count on them, until the price hikes slap you awake. For countless kitchens, Sara Lee has been that steady morning companion. The loaf sitting by the toaster before the coffee's even brewed. The sandwich slices tucked into a lunch bag with a small smile. The golden French toast filling the air with a Sunday kind of comfort. Artisano was pitched as the little step up, the treat-yourself upgrade from ordinary white bread. Thicker, richer, touched with buttery softness, offering bakery charm without draining your wallet. But lately, that charm comes with a side of hesitation. The loaf that once felt like an easy yes is now a pause and think purchase, creeping toward twice the cost many remember paying not long ago. It's no mystery that wheat prices have been swinging like a gate in a Midwest windstorm. Droughts in prime farming states, export restrictions from major grain producers, and the turmoil in Ukraine, a country that once handled nearly 1/10 of the world's wheat exports, have all played their part. Artisano's thick-cut style means every loaf eats up more wheat than standard sliced bread, so any bump in grain prices hits it harder. And because this bread uses enriched flour, the process adds yet another layer of cost, like paying extra for the cake and then again for the frosting. That buttery, tender bite isn't immune either. The blend of oils and fats that give Artisano its texture, soybean, canola, and butter, has been caught in its own price storm. Biofuel demand, coupled with global shipping disruptions, sent edible oil costs climbing more than 20% in certain quarters, according to USDA data from recent years. And big bakeries don't just wait these spikes out. They lock in supplier contracts that can keep prices high long after the headlines have moved on, meaning consumers keep paying even when markets settle. Distribution adds its own toll. Sara Lee, under the Bimbo Bakeries USA banner, runs an enormous delivery network that needs fuel, labor, and materials to hum along. When diesel costs shot to record highs in mid-2022, every truck run burned through more than just gas. It burned through profit margins. Even the humble bread bag and twist tie felt the squeeze, with polyethylene film and metal wire facing supply snags. Warehouse lighting and refrigeration costs, now pricier in many states, quietly fold into what you see on the shelf. Then there's the part that makes the higher price sting harder, the ingredients list. Artisano contains calcium propionate, a preservative banned for some uses in Europe due to studies linking it to behavioral changes in children. The US allows it within set limits, but for those wary of additives, the idea of paying more for something they'd rather avoid is a bitter mouthful. Certain emulsifiers and conditioners in the bread trace back to palm oil, shadowed by reports of deforestation and troubling labor conditions abroad. For shoppers who care about the ethics of their food, the moral cost sometimes feels heavier than the financial one. It's a strange twist. A loaf sold on bakery-style romance now carries the market mood swings of a Wall Street ticker, yet without the openness you'd get from a quarterly report. Local bakeries might shave profits to keep customers coming back, but global brands have investor expectations to answer to, and that can put warmth and loyalty far behind the numbers. For those not willing to pay up, the pivot can be simple but satisfying. Store-brand artisan loaves, like Walmart's Marketside Italian or Aldi's Specially Selected, can rival Artisano's softness for less. Grocery chains like Publix or Wegmans offer in-house baked loaves daily, often with shorter ingredient lists and decent markdowns later in the day. A quick homemade Pullman loaf or milk bread, using nothing more than flour, milk, sugar, yeast, salt, and butter, can be done in an afternoon and frozen in slices for weeks. And bakery outlets, Bimbo runs many, can deliver deep discounts if you're fine with buying close to the sell-by date. Sara Lee isn't jacking up prices in a vacuum. When you operate on a scale that feeds schools, hospitals, and supermarkets nationwide, one snag in the chain can ripple across the whole system. From labor shortages in baking plants to fuel spikes, the costs stack up. Yet for someone on a fixed income staring at a $4 loaf, those explanations don't sweeten the deal. Bread was never meant to be a luxury in America. But here we are, wondering if the good toast is worth the splurge, and asking the harder question, if even the simplest staples start to slip beyond reach, what pieces of everyday life will we be forced to let go of next? Number 3. Wonder Classic White Bread. Picture a kitchen table in mid-century America, the hum of a radio in the corner, a chipped plate, and a loaf of Wonder Bread standing proud in its polka dot bag like a friendly neighbor who never forgets your name. For generations, it's been the default slice for peanut butter and jelly, the quiet hero under a grilled cheese, the steady companion on road trips that smelled of sunscreen and gasoline. It wasn't just bread, it was a cultural backdrop, so ordinary you never questioned whether you could afford it. Now that quiet familiarity is being rattled, as the same loaf that once blended into the weekly shop now jumps out from the receipt, its price nudging toward double what it was before the inflation tide rolled in. The shock is sharper because Wonder was never pretending to be something fancy. This is no artisan sourdough or boutique bakery experiment. It's mass-produced white bread, the very emblem of efficiency, which is why shoppers feel blindsided when its price tag starts flirting with, or even outrunning, smaller bakery loaves. The reasons are woven into every slice. Wheat, particularly the hard red winter variety often used for soft sandwich bread, has seen wild swings thanks to Kansas and Oklahoma droughts and the war-driven supply squeeze from Ukraine. In a business baking millions of loaves, even a modest jump in grain prices ripples into something customers can feel at the register. But wheat is only part of the picture. That signature cotton soft crumb comes from bleached enriched flour, which needs extra processing, and a supporting cast of additives like calcium sulfate, datum, and high fructose corn syrup. Corn syrup's costs have a mind of their own, tugged higher by volatile corn harvests hit by Midwest floods and by ethanol industry demand. Stack enough of these commodity battles together, and the price has only one direction to go. Even the bag it comes in adds to the climb. Wonder's iconic red, yellow, blue polka dot packaging is made from polyethylene film, a material caught in resin shortages, and printed with inks that have gone up in price since chemical plant slowdowns worldwide. This is branding they can't strip down without losing part of their identity, so every penny of those increases ends up in the final shelf price. And there's the uncomfortable truth lurking in the ingredient list. High fructose corn syrup has been linked in multiple studies to obesity and metabolic disease, while datum has drawn scrutiny for possible heart-related effects in animal research. Both are legal here, but face tighter restrictions elsewhere. A fact that jars when you realize you're paying more for the same old formula. Add the environmental side effects of monoculture corn farming and flour bleaching, and the pure and simple image Wonder has traded on for decades starts to look more like marketing gloss than reality. Some shoppers are quietly stepping away. Store brands like Walmart's Great Value or Kroger's House Loaf can deliver the same softness without the nostalgia tax. Aldi's Lovin' Fresh line offers similar texture and shelf life at a leaner price. Local bakeries often turn out plain sandwich loaves with fewer ingredients, and picking them up at the end of the day can score big discounts. If you've got 3 hours in a kitchen, you can bake a week's worth yourself, slice, freeze, and pull out as needed, no polka dots required. Flowers Foods, Wonder's parent company, isn't immune to the same storms hitting your household. Erratic grain markets, fuel spikes, labor shortages, and the constant squeeze from retailers to keep prices acceptable while costs climb. On their scale, a hiccup can become a coast-to-coast ripple overnight. But for someone on a fixed income watching the total climb for a product that used to be an afterthought, those corporate challenges don't take the sting out. And here's the knot in the stomach. When an American icon that once promised reliability becomes another item you second-guess at the checkout, it's not just bread you're losing, it's a piece of normalcy. If the loaf that built strong bodies is now testing the strength of our wallets, what other staples and what other comforts will quietly price themselves out of reach before we notice they're gone? Number 4, Dave's Killer Bread. 21. Whole grains and seeds. It's hard to walk past a loaf of Dave's Killer Bread without feeling like it's giving you a sly grin. The kind that says, yeah, I'm different from the rest of this aisle. It's not just the bold black packaging or the rock and roll logo. It's the promise tucked inside. Organic grains, no. Artificial preservatives, a protein count you can brag about, and a backstory so American it could be a movie. Second chances for ex-convicts, wages meant to actually live on, and a mission to make bread more than just bread. For years, it was the rare packaged loaf that let you believe you could do right by your body, your conscience, and maybe even your street cred, all without firing up your own oven. But lately, that confidence has been colliding head-on with reality as the price tag inches toward double what many of its most loyal fans paid not so long ago, turning better for you into maybe next time. Part of the sticker shock comes from the sheer complexity of making a loaf like this. Organic certification isn't a one-time stamp. Every ingredient in that 21 seed and grain medley has to be grown, harvested, transported, and inspected under rules that make the IRS look casual. Flaxseed, pumpkin seeds, quinoa, millet. These aren't crops your neighbor grows out back. They come from all over the map, some from countries where one hiccup at a port can stall shipments for weeks. The droughts in Montana and North Dakota have squeezed organic wheat harvests, pushing mills to pay more and pass it along. And when global shipping costs spiked in 2022, even a humble sunflower seed could cost more to get to the bakery than the bread itself used to sell for. Then there's the price of putting those ingredients in the right hands. Flowers Foods, the company behind Dave's, runs trucks across the country every day. And when diesel prices shot through the roof, those miles got expensive fast. Factor in their hiring philosophy, paying living wages, giving jobs to people trying to rebuild their lives, and you're looking at labor costs that are both admirable and heavy to carry. The moral high ground is worth standing on, but it's not the cheapest real estate in the food industry. Even the bread's no preservatives halo has its hidden costs. To keep it fresh without synthetic additives, they lean on organic vinegar, cultured wheat, and high-tech packaging. But that only buys so much time. The distribution has to be razor tight, turnover quick, and waste minimal. If a truck gets delayed or a shelf stays too full for too long, expired loaves pile up. And that loss doesn't disappear. It gets spread across the price of every loaf that does sell. Add to that the eyebrow-raising sugar content, 5 grams per slice, courtesy and part of organic cane sugar with its own labor controversies. And some shoppers start feeling like they're paying extra for a health image that's a little more complicated up close. Even the sourcing story has shadows. Quinoa booms in South America have pushed local prices so high that traditional consumers can't afford their own staple food. Seeds that travel thousands of miles leave a carbon footprint bigger than most shoppers picture when they hear organic. And while Dave's doesn't write the rules of global agriculture, the ripple effects of their ingredient list are part of the loaf whether we taste them or not. Some fans are already swapping. Aldi's Simply Nature Organic 21 grain and Costco's in-house organic multi-seed loaf undercut Dave's by a healthy margin. Local co-ops and farmers markets sometimes offer hearty seeded breads baked with regional wheat, sidestepping the global shipping tangle. And a home-baked seeded loaf using bulk seeds from a warehouse club can give you 2 loaves for less than half the store price. Freeze one and you're set for weeks. To be fair, the very things that make Dave's worth admiring are the same things that keep the price climbing. Organic inputs, ethical sourcing, paying workers more than the industry norm. In a market where cheap bread is often built on low wages, conventional wheat, and chemical preservatives, holding the line on values comes with a bill. But for someone on a fixed income, those ideals start to feel like luxuries that belong to someone else. And here's the bitter crumb at the bottom of the bag. When a loaf that once stood for doing good and eating well becomes the bread you can't afford, it forces a choice no one should have to make: your health ideals or your financial sanity. If the bread aisle itself is starting to split into the haves and have-nots, how long before nutritious, ethically made food is less a right and more an invitation-only club? And when that day comes, will we still call it progress? Or will we finally admit we've priced humanity off the table? Number 5. Pepperage Farm Whole Grain 15 grain bread. Some brands dress for the grocery store like they're headed to a Sunday brunch. Pepperage Farm has always carried itself that way. Elegant script on the bag. Golden slices posed in ads like they're waiting for a lifestyle magazine photographer to say, "Perfect." The whole grain 15 grain bread was its runway piece. Hearty, textured, freckled with seeds. The kind of loaf that felt equally at home in a doctor-approved diet plan and in a sandwich you'd be proud to serve guests. For many older Americans watching cholesterol or keeping an eye on blood sugar, it was a little victory. Proof you could have bread that tasted good and still felt like it was doing something for you. But lately, that victory has been coming with a catch. In some states, the price has nearly doubled from what it was before the pandemic, leaving shoppers wondering if healthy is becoming another word for only if you can afford it. That climb isn't just the result of a broad, everything's more expensive shrug. A bread that lives up to the 15 grain label is juggling a whole roster of ingredients: millet, oats, barley, flaxseed, sesame, sunflower, and more, each with its own weather risks and market mood swings. Oat harvests in the northern plains fell hard in 2021 and 2022 after prolonged drought, sending prices up and keeping them there. Barley and flaxseed saw similar declines, with both U.S. and Canadian yields shrinking under heat waves and water shortages. These aren't fillers you can quietly swap without changing taste and texture. And Pepperage Farm, with decades of loyalty on the line, can't afford to gamble with the formula, because one bad bite can lose a customer for good. Making this bread also means navigating a production chain where small hiccups hit big. Specialty grains are often cleaned, hulled, and processed by smaller facilities that can't absorb rising costs the way giant wheat mills can. When natural gas prices spiked in 2022, the energy bill for grain drying operations spiked too, and those surcharges move down the line. Even the multi-layer printed bread bag plays a role. The resins, inks, and machines needed to produce it all face their own supply chain delays and price hikes. And because the loaf avoids heavy-duty preservatives, it's on a short clock from oven to cart. Every unsold loaf that goes stale becomes waste, and the cost of that waste quietly folds back into the loaves that make it out the door. The whole grain halo also hides a few shadows. Alongside the oats and barley, you'll often find molasses or even small amounts of high fructose corn syrup. The very sweeteners many over 55 shoppers try to limit for metabolic health. Calcium propionate, a mold inhibitor, is perfectly legal here, but limited in certain European uses over potential behavioral side effects in children. Even if the science says the amounts are safe, there's something off-putting about paying more for what you assume was as clean as the marketing made it sound. And the supply chain ethics aren't always as picturesque as the ads. Sesame seeds have been linked to exploitative labor in parts of Africa and South Asia. Sunflower seeds, a major component, are heavily sourced from Ukraine. The war not only cut supply and raised prices, but also pushed some processors toward new regions with fewer labor protections. Whole grain may be true on the label, but it's not the whole truth about how it gets to your table. Some shoppers are finding ways around the premium. Store brands like Walmart's Great Value 12 Grain or Aldi's Simply Nature, Organic Seed-tastic deliver similar nutrition for less. Regional supermarkets that bake in-house often have grain-rich loaves at better prices, especially during end-of-day markdowns. And for those willing to measure and mix, buying grains and seeds in bulk from a warehouse club and folding them into a basic bread recipe can yield several loaves for the price of one Pepperage farm. Freeze the extras, and you've got weeks of hearty toast without another checkout shock. Pepperage Farm isn't just hiking prices for fun. Specialty grain sourcing, ethical commitments, and quality packaging are expensive, and those costs have been hammered by fuel volatility, labor shortages, and climate disruptions. Keeping the product true to its image in this environment isn't cheap, but if you're on a fixed income, knowing the brand's challenges doesn't change the fact that $5 or more for a single loaf is a big ask. And here's the quiet punch. When bread marketed as the healthy choice starts to slip out of reach for the very people it's meant to serve, the health benefits get replaced by a harder question. Will shoppers settle for cheaper, less nourishing loaves to make the budget work, trading long-term health for short-term savings? Or is this just another sign that in today's America, the best options, even in something as basic as bread, are becoming the privilege of those who can afford them, while everyone else takes what's left? When the truth about your daily bread hits this hard, what will you do next? Subscribe and join the conversation?
Thanks a lot for sticking with us to the very end. If you found this video useful, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe so you won't miss any daily uploads. And now, go ahead and explore some of our top recommended videos popping up on your screen. Goodbye, and see you in the next one.